Salem Village, Massachusetts, 1692. It's the height of summer, but the heat wave has been relentless, making life in the small Puritan community a misery. Crops are failing and tempers are flaring. But for Reverend Samuel Parris, it's more than just the heat he's worried about. For months, he's been plagued by strange occurrences in his house. At first, there was the constant shaking. Then, there were the strange voices. And now, his daughter and niece have started acting strangely as well. In a world where 1 in 5 people believed they'd seen a witch in the previous year, it wasn't hard to believe that something dark and evil was afoot. And so, when 3 young girls began having fits in the Parris household, it didn't take long for the entire town to turn on a dime. Fear gripped the village like never before. Accusations flew. Fingers were pointed. And soon, a special court was convened to bring the alleged witches to justice. Before long, 5 women found themselves behind bars. And as their trials commenced, more and more people came to believe that the devil himself was at work in Salem Village. Were these women really witches? Or was there another explanation for what had happened in Salem? Let's find out. Life in 17th century New England was tough, especially if you lived in a small village founded by Puritans who believed they were constantly under attack from the forces of hell. Ever since the village of Salem was founded in 1626, its inhabitants had faced hardship after hardship. Harsh winters, failed crops, and constant attacks from Native Americans had taken their toll on the settlement. And by the 1690s, the people of Salem were desperate for a change in fortune. But unfortunately for them, things were about to get much worse. By January of 1692, a bitter winter had settled over Salem Village, and the people were starting to get desperate. Food was running low, and the threat of starvation loomed over the settlement. Tensions were high, and tempers were flaring, and no one was sure what to do next. In the midst of this chaos, Reverend Samuel Parris noticed that his daughter and niece were acting strangely. They were often seen in the forest, and they seemed to be possessed by some kind of dark energy. This was disturbing to the Puritan community because it was widely believed that witches were at work in the area. On January 15, 1692, Reverend Parris and his wife, a well-respected couple in the community, sent for help. Their daughter and niece had been acting strangely for weeks, and they needed someone to intervene. Enter Reverend John Hale, a well-known minister and expert on witchcraft. He had written several books on the subject and was called in to help determine whether or not the girls were indeed possessed. After examining the girls, Reverend Hale came to the conclusion that they were indeed possessed by the devil. He believed that they were being tormented by witches and that they needed to be rescued from the evil that was afflicting them. But before he could take any action, the girls began to have fits in front of him, screaming and thrashing about in ways that were both terrifying and disturbing. Fearing for their safety, Reverend Hale and the parishioners took the girls to the home of Reverend Parris where they could be monitored more closely. But as days turned into weeks, the situation only grew worse. The girls continued to have fits, and their behavior became more and more erratic. Soon, other members of the community began to take notice, and rumors started to spread that the devil was at work in Salem Village. Before long, the local court was convened, and 5 women were arrested on suspicion of witchcraft. The first was Sarah Good, an impoverished beggar who lived on the outskirts of town. The second was Rebecca Nurse, a respected member of the community and the mother of 7. The third was Elizabeth Howe, a young woman who was known for her herbal remedies. The fourth was Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who was often seen in the forest. And the fifth was Martha Carrier, a middle-aged woman who had a reputation for being a healer. These 5 women were accused of using witchcraft to afflict the young girls and bring evil upon the community. And as the trials began, the entire town of Salem turned on a dime. Fear gripped the villagers like never before as accusations flew and fingers were pointed. The Salem Witch Trials were a dark chapter in American history. And while they eventually came to an end, the legacy of fear and paranoia they created lived on for centuries. The trials serve as a reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria and the importance of due process. They also offer a glimpse into the religious fervor and superstition that characterized early New England. Did these women really practice witchcraft? Or were they simply victims of circumstance? You decide. Upon the death of Reverend Samuel Parris's daughter, Betty, the other girls in Salem begin exhibiting strange symptoms. What started as a fever was now something much more terrifying. The girls began convulsing, screaming, and claiming that they were being tormented by invisible spirits. Good morning, Salem. Hope you slept well. How are your children? Are they asleep still, or have they gone back to school? Well, if you don't mind my prying, I must ask, are they sleeping with one eye open just in case? Because that's what I hear parents are doing. That's what I hear parents are doing. Oh, for heaven's sake, Martha, can't a girl have a moment's peace? They are not tormented by spirits. They are having fits, and it's all in their heads. Well, if you say so, doctor. But then, why are they crying out the word witchcraft? I heard little Mary Walcott screaming it in her sleep last night. Oh, that's easy. They've been reading those silly books again. You know how children are. One minute they're playing with dolls, the next they're calling each other witches. And when they say witchcraft, they mean some spirit has stolen their dolly. Can't imagine what a fuss it's all about. Oh, but you do, sir, or you wouldn't be writing down every word they say, would you, sir? Every word they say and every twitch of their lips. I saw them today. All the afflicted girls were gathered together in the Parrises' parlor, and when I entered, there was a heavy silence. I asked them how they were feeling, and the answer came back in unison. Much better, thank you, sir. Then Tituba began to speak of how she had been visited by invisible spirits, and soon all the girls were crying out, "Witchcraft! Witchcraft!" In unison again, they cried out in pain and contorted their bodies in ways that made my blood run cold. Well, what did you expect, doctor? It's not like you've ever seen a spirit before. Did you think they would look like George Washington or one of the apostles? No, child. I doubt they look like anyone we know. But surely there is an explanation for this. Why else would Mary Warren, a servant girl who has never read a book in her life, suddenly start quoting scripture and prophesying the end of the world? There is an explanation. What do you mean, Reverend? Do you believe these girls are faking their fits? I think we need to be very careful here, Doctor. We have no wish to upset the Lord's work. Are you saying the devil can't make a 10-year-old girl scream in pain and contort her body? Are you saying that? You are indeed saying that. Then I say to you, sir, that there is madness in your heart and in your words, madness that I will not tolerate. Leave our village at once and never darken our doorstep again. Wait, Reverend. I'm trying to help. I may not believe in spirits, Doctor, but that doesn't mean I'm not a Christian. And God will punish you for tempting young girls into sin. Tempted by who? By me. I barely know those girls. They come to me for help, and I try to rationalize their behavior away. I'm a physician, Reverend. I deal in facts and logic, not superstition. If their fits are a hoax, then it means that they are lying to us, which means they are possessed by the very evil they claim to be escaping. And if they are possessed, then who is behind it? Is it Abigail Williams who wishes to take revenge on Elizabeth Proctor because she dislikes her? Or is it Tituba, the Black Witch from Barbados? Or Sarah Good, who lives alone in the forest and has dealings with the devil? Or maybe it's all three of them. And maybe there is some truth to the matter after all. And so the problem deepens, the accusations fly higher, and reason and logic fall on deaf ears. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the most important part of today's show. Have you been touched by witchcraft? Have you or someone you love been touched by witchcraft? Oh, please, Doctor, don't speak of such things. Let's move on. Please, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been touched by witchcraft, write to us. We have the solution for you. Write to us at Witchery Productions, Salem, Massachusetts. Please hurry. The afflicted girls grow weaker by the day. Help them. Please send your answers at once. On February 1692, 3 women were accused of a most heinous crime. They were charged with the practice of witchcraft, which in Salem meant one thing. They were all three heretics. Tituba, a slave from Barbados, Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, and Sarah Osborne, a sickly outcast. All three were poor. All three were treated like outcasts by the community, and all three would become the first victims of the Salem Witch Trials. Tituba was put before the court first. She'd been a slave for several years now, and everyone knew she'd come from a strange land far away. Her accent and her religion made her an easy target. Reverend Paris told the court that he'd heard Tituba singing some Barbados songs, and those songs had evil in them. He'd also heard her praying to a strange god, and so it was clear to him that this woman was a servant of the devil. Sarah Good, the beggar, was a bit more of a mystery. She was well known in Salem because every day she went door to door asking for food and money, but where she came from and why she was in Salem was unknown. Many people simply believed that she was a witch because she wouldn't answer any questions about herself, and she seemed to be everywhere at once. And then there was Sarah Osborne. She was old and sick and couldn't work, and her neighbors said that she looked like a witch. None of the three women knew why they were accused, but that didn't stop the court from grilling them. When Tituba was questioned, she was told that if she confessed to being a witch, she'd be set free. But if she denied it and was found guilty, she'd be banished from New England and never allowed to return. It wasn't much of a choice, really. After Tituba confessed to signing the Devil's Book, things got very messy. The other two women were forced to confess too. Soon after, all three were taken out of the room while the men argued over what to do with them. They'd agreed that the three women were witches, but what should be done about it? When they returned, they were told that the next step was to take them to the jail and keep them until a decision was reached. This is when things took a violent turn. Tituba, who had been crying and begging for mercy, suddenly lashed out. She scratched and clawed at one of the judges, and when he slapped her, she bit another one. The judge presiding over the case lost his wig in the struggle, and when he finally got Tituba under control, they dragged her off to jail. Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne went with her, and soon the three cells next to each other were filled with the sobs and screams of these three women. But Tituba knew something they didn't. She'd already confessed, and that meant she would be saved. Or at least that's what she thought. As the days passed, she watched in horror as Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne were taken from their cells and forced to sit for hours in the square while people threw things at them and shouted accusations. They were paraded around town like animals, and Tituba could hear the crowd chanting, "Witch! Witch! Witch!" Then one day, Sarah Good was taken away and no one ever saw her again. Tituba begged the guards to let her speak with Sarah before she disappeared into the courthouse, but they refused. A few days later, Sarah Osborne was taken away too, and Tituba was left alone in her cell. Days turned into weeks, and Tituba waited, hoping that she'd be released. But instead, more and more prisoners were brought in, and soon the jail was filled to the brim with accused witches. One night, Tituba slipped out of her cell and escaped. She ran to the woods and hid, knowing that if she was caught, she'd be put to death. For months, she lived in fear, hiding during the day and coming out only at night to look for food. Finally, when the first snow fell, she gave up. She couldn't live like this anymore. She turned herself in and hoped that they would kill her quickly. But to her surprise, they didn't. Instead, they took her back to the courthouse and made her watch as more and more people were accused of witchcraft. All the time, she sat there thinking about how she'd been tricked into confessing. She hadn't even signed the Devil's Book. She'd just put her mark on a piece of paper, and that was enough for them to believe she was a witch. As the trial went on, she knew that there was only one way it could end. And when that day finally came, she was right. She was dragged out of the courthouse and put to death by hanging. But before she died, she looked up at the crowd and said, "God damn this honorable court and all the laws they make." And with that, she died. Salem Village, 1692. Good people of Salem, I come to you today not to bury Caesar, but to praise him. For it is no exaggeration to say that our very world has been made a better place by the removal of such a monster. It is true that he lived among us for many years, perhaps even decades, but we are all agreed now that his influence was a corrupting one, poisoning the minds of our children, turning neighbor against neighbor, father against son. And I must say it has been a joy to see so many of our misguided youth set on the path of righteousness once more. It is no secret that when the devil takes possession of a person, he preys upon their deepest fears and their basest desires. And in this case, he found willing accomplices among the young girls of the village. They are clever, manipulative, and they use their charms to ensnare the unwary and the weak-willed. At first, it was just Tituba, the Indian slave girl. Then, soon after, it was Sarah Good, a beggar, and then Sarah Osborne, an old, ugly woman who had the misfortune to be poor. And before long, others joined their spectral dance, each more innocent than the last until the very air grew thick with witchcraft. For what is witchcraft? Is it not the fear of the unseen world, the dread of what may lie beyond the grave? It is no wonder that these poor souls were accused when even our ministers spoke of a town possessed. Could there not be others like them, others who had yielded to the devil's temptations? The ministers of Salem tell me that spectral evidence is strong and true, for how can a soul be so moved as to speak with, see with, and dream with spirits? If the devil can disguise himself and appear as an angel of light, can he not also whisper in the ear of a sleeping girl and show her visions of the future or the past? Is it not proof enough that he would send his demons to drag these poor souls to his own dark purpose? Are we to doubt their visions because we cannot see with our own eyes? We who are blessed with reason and with faith are called to see what lies beneath the surface, to discern the presence of the devil in our midst. And it is no easy task. Our judges have seen fit to allow this evidence in our courts, and many a soul has been sent to the gallows on the strength of a vision or a dream. But let us not be hasty in our judgments, lest we condemn the innocent along with the guilty. For while the devil may disguise himself, he cannot wholly hide his traces. Look closely, and you will see the signs. A strange and sudden illness, a fit that comes in the night, a contortion of the face, an unnatural cackling or laughter, an animal that is strangely slain. These are the fruits of Satan's presence, and it is by such signs that we may hope to root out the evil that is among us. I have heard some say that these are but the symptoms of a troubled mind, and indeed, many of those accused have suffered greatly from the vapors. But I ask you this, would a troubled mind be able to produce such perfect visions, such undeniable proof of Satan's presence? I think not, for the devil's touch is known by its fruits, and if these poor souls are possessed, then surely they are not possessed by the good spirit. Let us not be afraid to speak out against the devil, to expose his lies and his deceptions. Let us not fear to cry witchcraft when we see the signs, for it is a duty to our neighbors, to ourselves, and to God. Let us drive the devil and his minions from our town and banish them forever. Thank you for watching this episode of The Crucible. To learn more about the Salem Witch Trials, visit our website. Are you ready to step into a world where the darkness is your only companion? Where the air is thick with despair and the silence is deafening? Welcome to the jail's overflow. Dark, overcrowded dungeons fill with the accused. Chains rattle, prayers echo through the damp walls, and those imprisoned whisper of shadowy figures visiting them at night. Some swear they feel the devil's presence pressing on their chests as they sleep. Are you brave enough to venture into this abyss of horror, to face the haunting realities of life behind these cold, unforgiving bars? If so, then prepare yourself for an exploration into the depths of human suffering and the chilling tales that will forever scar your soul. In the heart of a city shrouded in mist and secrets lies a jail, a grim monolith that has witnessed more than its share of despair. It stands as a symbol of justice, or what some would call unjust us. Within its cold embrace, the lives of countless individuals have been broken, their fates sealed by the weight of accusations, and the indifference of a society that often fails to separate the innocent from the guilty. The year is 1848, and London is a city teeming with life, but also drowning in its own filth and corruption. Poverty, crime, and injustice are rampant, and the jail, with its towering presence, becomes the receptacle of society's ills. As you make your way through the heavy oak doors, each step echoes the sorrow and regret that permeates these hallowed halls. Before you stretches a labyrinth of dank cells, each one a testament to the misery that awaits. The stench of stale waste and decay assaults your nostrils, mingling with the despair that hangs heavy in the air. You see the faces of the prisoners, drawn and haggard, their eyes hollowed out by sorrow and their bodies wasting away under the weight of hopelessness. They cling to their last shreds of dignity, yet their very humanity seems to be seeping away through the cracks of their confinement. As you navigate the dimly lit corridors, you hear the whispers of the prisoners, their voices weaving tales of torment and despair. Some speak of the unbearable stench that permeates the jail, a constant reminder of their dehumanizing conditions. Others tell of the rats that scuttle through the shadows, sharing their meager rations and mocking their captivity with their beady little eyes. But it is in the cramped cells that the true horrors unfold. The walls are a canvas of misery, smeared with the grime of despair and the tears of the forsaken. The beds, if they can be called that, are mere patches of straw that offer no respite from the cold, hard floor. And the toilets, oh, the toilets are a place where privacy is a luxury and dignity is cast aside. And then there are the shadows. They seem to dance in the corners of your vision, taking on sinister shapes and whispering of the darkness that lurks within these four walls. Some say the shadows are their only solace, for in their darkness they find a companion to their solitude. Others, well, they see the shadows and run, for they know that behind those shifting shapes lurk the demons of their past, the ones they try so desperately to outrun. You encounter a young woman named Eliza, her eyes filled with a haunting sadness that seems to pierce your soul. She tells you her story, a tale of wrongful accusation and the slow erosion of her hope. Her voice, once strong and vibrant, now trembles with each word, a melody of despair that resonates through the chambers of your heart. As you listen to her story, you realize that behind these cold, hard walls there is humanity suffering, yearning for a light that seems eternally distant. In Eliza's eyes, you see the reflection of your own soul, questioning the very nature of justice and the darkness that can consume even the purest of hearts. Will you stand as a beacon of hope in this desolate landscape of despair? Will you lend a helping hand to those who have lost all hope? Or will you turn away, allowing their cries to fade into the deafening silence of human apathy? The choice, my friends, is yours. But remember, the darkness is real, and sometimes only a single spark is needed to ignite the flames of change. Salem, Massachusetts, June 1692. Bridget Bishop, a 30-year-old woman with a reputation for being a little odd, stands before the assembled townspeople. She's been accused of witchcraft, specifically of afflicting one of the young girls who's had fits in the town. And the girl swears up and down that Bridget cursed her, so Bridget's gonna hang. As the noose is adjusted around her neck, she looks down at the crowd. She sees Rebecca Nurse, an older woman known for her piety and good works. And Bridget says, "Good morning, Mrs. Nurse. How does my neck look to you?" She then turns to the Reverend Paris, who's also watching, and says, "Will you pray for me?" Paris turns away, unable to meet her eyes. Bridget is left standing there alone as the executioner adjusts the trap door beneath her feet. When it's ready, he gives her a sign. She takes a deep breath, steps onto the trap door, and falls. A hush falls over the crowd as they watch her body swing. Slowly, very slowly, a large black shadow seems to detach itself from her form and drift down into the crowd. People scream and point. They see it slither into the nearby woods. They hear it slither and shake, and then it disappears. Reverend Paris steps forward. He tells the people what they just saw was the devil himself fleeing. And with that, Their terror is complete. Later that day, after the second and third executions, George Burroughs, a respected minister, stands before the gallows. He too has been accused of witchcraft, though he swears his only crime is that he once put a hex on someone who made fun of him. Now he looks out at the crowd and sees Martha Carrier, a poor woman whose children are already dead, having been taken by the fever that's been sweeping the town. "Good morrow, Martha," he calls out. "How does my neck look to you?" Martha stares back at him impassively and motions to her own neck. George understands. Martha has no sympathy for him. She knows what's coming and she's ready for it. "What do you mean?" asks George. "I have done nothing." She says, "You will be dead by sundown." Then she turns and walks away without another word. George steps onto the trap door, but the Reverend Parris rushes forward and grabs his foot. "I won't allow this," he says. "I haven't finished praying." George looks down at the trap door. There's no way out now, so he closes his eyes and accepts his fate. The trap door opens and he steps onto it. The crowd gasps as the rope tightens around his neck. It's clear he won't live through this. But, as they watch, the shadow detaches itself from his body and drifts down into the crowd. Some people cry out, pointing, but others are starting to whisper that it was just a bird. George's body swings for a bit, then collapses. He's barely dead when the next accused witch, Martha Carrier, steps up to the platform. "Good morrow," she calls out. "How does my neck look to you?" This time, no one answers. No one says a word. She motions to her own neck and then walks past the corpse of George Burroughs onto the trap door. As the rope tightens around her neck, she looks out at the silent crowd and raises her head back. Just before the shadow detaches itself from her body and floats away, she screams, "This is the curse of Salem." In the end, Bridget Bishop, George Burroughs, and Martha Carrier are only the first of many to die in Salem. For years, the town will tremble as the gallows claim life after life, all because the accused witches refuse to confess their crimes or renounce the devil, even though everyone knows the only thing they did was cast a few suspicious glances and say a few off-color words. Thanks for watching. One by one, they climbed the ladder to the gallows. 19 people in all, innocent men and women whose only crime was proclaiming their faith in Jesus Christ. For 12 long months they had been held in this place, tortured, abused, and forced to watch as their friends and neighbors were executed until it was their turn to die. When it began, there were 20 of them, but one had already died in prison, and now here they were at the edge of the ladder, about to join him. At first, the crowd watched in silence as the condemned were hanged. They were good people, these men and women, and they did not deserve to die. But they had believed in Jesus when no one else did, and now they were paying the price. But then something strange began to happen. As each person was led to the gallows, strange winds seemed to rise up, whipping the crowd's faces with cold, hard air. And overhead, black birds circled, cawing loudly as if mourning those about to die. Then, when the executioner finished his grim task and the condemned person's body swung gently in the breeze, an eerie silence fell over Salem. No one said a word. No one uttered a sound. Even the birds fell silent as if in reverence to the dead. And so it went, person after person, until only 3 remained alive. They could hear the murmurings of the crowd, their own names being called, wondering if they would be next. Then suddenly, just as abruptly as it had begun, the silence ended. The crowd parted like the Red Sea and stepped aside, revealing an empty space where moments before there had been a noose and a corpse. And standing there in the middle of the square, his hands raised in victory, was the resurrected Lord Jesus Christ. His eyes, blazing with righteous anger, swept over the crowd. And when his gaze fell upon the 3 remaining prisoners, he spoke. "Do you also want to go away?" he asked them, and they answered, "Who do you think we are? We know you are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said to them, "Then let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. So they left the crowd and the multitude and followed Jesus out of the city, down a narrow path leading into the forest. There they built a small house, and the three of them lived there for the rest of their days, preaching the gospel and raising up disciples who would carry the message to every nation under heaven. Every year, on the anniversary of their death, the Church remembers them as martyrs, those who died for their faith in Jesus Christ. And every time the bells toll, we remember that when the hour of death comes, only two things will matter. First, whether we have trusted in Jesus for our sins, and second, whether we have taken up our crosses and followed Him. If we have done both, then no matter what the world may throw against us, no matter how great the suffering, no matter how great the cost, we can stand firm, knowing that one day soon we will hear the bells of heaven tolling for us, and we will be welcomed into the presence of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. If you have never trusted Jesus for your sin, then today is the day to begin following Him. He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So come and follow me. Remember, Jesus loves you, and until next time, walk in the Spirit and be blessed. A man is trapped beneath a pile of heavy stones, his body crushed and broken, his life slowly seeping out of him. He gasps for air, but it's too late. This man would not plead, and when he finally did speak, his last words were a chilling, "More weight." His name was Giles Corey, and he was one of the victims of the Salem Witch Trials. He was an elderly, well-respected farmer who lived in Salem Village, Massachusetts. In 1692, his daughter-in-law, Sarah Good, was accused of being a witch. Although Giles had no part in the witchcraft craze that gripped the town, he found himself accused and arrested, too. When Giles was taken to court, he refused to plead guilty or not guilty to the charge of witchcraft. Instead, he stood silently before the judges, staring straight ahead. He also refused to answer any questions they put to him. So, the judge declared that he should be pressed. That meant that Giles would be crushed beneath heavy stones until he confessed his guilt. But Giles still refused to plead, even as the stones were placed upon him. One witness to the cruel punishment later wrote that Giles lay like a dog in his bloody shirt, his face full of blood, his eyes lifting up to heaven, his tongue hanging out of his mouth, his head quite crushed. After 90 minutes, Giles finally gasped, "More weight," and then he died. As soon as the news of Corey's death reached the townspeople, rumors began circulating that his ghost now cursed Salem. People claimed that they saw his ghost walking along the streets, especially near the site of his death. They also said that they heard him say, "More weight." Over the years, the story has grown. Some now say that Giles's ghost is the most haunted place in Salem. Many believe that the spirit of Giles still walks the earth, seeking revenge on those who put him to death. Visitors report seeing a man in 17th century clothing walking through the town, and then he disappears. Others have heard strange whispers and voices saying, "More weight," especially at night when the wind is howling. There are those who claim that if you walk past the old burying point in Salem without acknowledging Giles' spirit, then you will die within a year. But if you do pay your respects to him, then he will protect you from harm. Although these stories may seem scary, there's something strangely comforting about them. It's almost as if Giles is telling us that no matter how heavy the burden we carry, we should never give up hope. Even in the darkest of times, we must keep our heads held high and our spirits unbroken, just like Giles Corey. So the next time you find yourself feeling down, just remember Giles and his last words, "More weight." Let his courage inspire you to keep going. Let his spirit guide you, and let his memory keep you strong. Now it's time for you to take a stand. Are you ready to show the world that you won't be intimidated? Are you ready to face your fears and stand up for what you believe in? Are you ready to make a change in your life? Whatever your reason may be, know that you're not alone. There are others who feel the same way, and together you can make a difference. Don't be afraid to speak out. Let your voice be heard. It's time to take action. The future is in your hands. What will you do with it? Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, please like and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. Have a great day. Salem, Massachusetts, 1692. The witch trials are over. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, let me catch you up. A group of young girls claimed that they were being tormented by witches. The local minister, Reverend Samuel Parris, along with other prominent members of the community, believed these girls and urged the authorities to investigate. 9 people were hanged as witches. 1 man was pressed to death, and several others died in jail. In the end, all of the accusations were disproven, and those responsible for the chaos were shunned by society. But now, 3 centuries later, Salem remains haunted. Tourists and locals alike speak of phantom footsteps, ghostly figures near Gallows Hill, and the cries of the accused echoing through the night. Now, most of the houses that were around back then have been torn down, but some still stand. And at night, it is said that you can hear the screams of those accused echoing from their walls. So, let's take a look at the top 5 haunted places in Salem to see if there's anywhere we should avoid after dark. Number 5. The Witch House. This house is also known as the Jonathan Corwin House, and it is the only structure still standing in Salem that was directly involved in the witch trials. Corwin was one of the judges that presided over the trials, and he made a fortune off of confiscating the property of those accused. Legend has it that he used his wealth to build this house, which is why it's also known as the Judge's House. Some believe that the home is haunted by the spirits of those whose lives he ruined. Visitors have reported hearing footsteps, shaking beds, and even seeing apparitions. Number 4. Old Burying Point. This cemetery may not look like much during the day, but at night it's a whole different story. It is said that the ghosts of those buried here, including several victims of the Salem Witch Trials, come out to roam the streets. Some believe that the cemetery is cursed. After all, it is the final resting place of Bridget Bishop, the first woman to be hanged for witchcraft in Salem. Others say that the spirits of those buried here are simply restless and searching for peace. Whatever the case, it is best to stay away from this cemetery after dark. Number 3. The Witch Dungeon Museum. If you're looking for a good scare, then be sure to visit the Witch Dungeon Museum. This museum is located in the basement of the old jail and is full of all sorts of creepy artifacts, including shackles, a torture device known as the thumb crusher, and a replica of the gallows used in the Salem Witch Trials. But that's not all. It is said that the dungeon is also haunted by the spirits of those who were imprisoned here. Visitors have reported hearing chains dragging metal moans and disembodied voices. Number 2. Charter Street Cemetery. This cemetery is the final resting place of many of the accused witches, including Giles Corey, who was pressed to death. Legend has it that his ghost still walks the streets of Salem searching for his lost eyesight. Others say that the cemetery is haunted by the spirits of all the accused witches, and they come out at night to roam the grounds. Many people have reported seeing ghosts here, including the ghost of a little girl who is said to be the daughter of 2 witches. She is often seen playing near the old jail or wandering the streets of Salem. And finally, number 1, Gallows Hill. This is the spot where Bridget Bishop and 5 others were hanged for witchcraft in 1692. Legend has it that the hill is haunted by the spirits of those who were executed here, and it is said that you can still hear their screams echoing through the trees. Some say that the hill is also haunted by the ghost of Judge Samuel Sewall, who presided over the witch trials. He was responsible for sentencing these innocent people, and he later came to regret his actions. It is said that he can often be seen walking the streets of Salem at night, searching for redemption. If you're ever in Salem, be sure to pay a visit to Gallows Hill. Just be careful after dark. Thanks for watching. Salem, Massachusetts, is a town that needs no introduction. It's the site of one of America's darkest chapters, the Salem Witch Trials. Between February 1692 and May 1693, more than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft in colonial Massachusetts. 20 were executed, 19 by hanging, and 1 by pressing. But the story doesn't end there. Some say the restless souls of the accused still linger in Salem, making regular appearances to those who know where to look. Are these stories just tales spun by an overactive imagination, or are there really ghosts in Salem? And if so, what are they, and why won't they rest in peace? Join me today as we explore some of the most haunted places in Salem and find out. For our first stop, we head to the old burying point on Charter Street. Established in 1637, it's one of the oldest cemeteries in the United States. The headstones are weathered and worn, some to the point where the inscriptions are almost impossible to read. Beneath one such stone is the body of Bridget Bishop, the first woman to be executed for witchcraft in Salem. She was hanged on June 10, 1692, along with 8 others. As the trials reached their peak, more and more people began to fear for their lives. A local minister, Reverend George Burroughs, was among them. He and his wife, Rebecca, had 2 young children, but when the time came for their execution, he sent them away to protect them from the horrors that awaited their parents. Bridget Bishop was also the mother of 3, but she didn't have the chance to protect her children. After her execution, they were taken in by relatives. The 3 siblings would reunite as adults, but tragedy would strike again. Both Rebecca and Bridget's children died young, and they were laid to rest in the old burying point next to their parents. Some say the 3 restless spirits can sometimes be seen wandering the cemetery at night. Our next stop takes us to Gallows Hill, the site of the last 4 executions during the Salem Witch Trials. There isn't much to see here today except a small plaque marking the spot where George Burroughs, John Willard, and Martha Carrier were hanged on August 19, 1692. But what some people do not realize is that beneath that plaque are the bodies of 3 innocent people. George Burroughs may have been a minister, but that didn't save him from the hangman's noose. In fact, his fate was made all the worse because of his profession. He was paraded through the streets of Salem before his execution and forced to wear a black leather bag with the image of a devil sewn onto it. John Willard was a farmer and Martha Carrier a beggar. They, along with Bridget Bishop, were accused of bewitching the Reverend Mr. Parris's daughter and niece. All 3 denied the charges against them, but that didn't stop the authorities from finding them guilty. Some say the spirits of the 3 victims are bound to Gallows Hill, forever seeking justice for the wrongful accusations that led to their deaths. Legend has it that those who stand on the hill at night can hear their voices crying out for revenge. We now come to the final resting place of many of the accused, including Sarah Good, a beggar, and Rebecca Nurse, a respected member of the community who attended church regularly and was considered a pillar of morality. She was accused of being a witch after one of the accusers claimed to have seen the devil conversing with her in a field. Despite her good name, she was found guilty and sentenced to death. Her heartbroken husband, John, tried to save her by offering to buy her a new suit and fine linen so she could present herself better in court, but it was to no avail. Rebecca was hanged on July 19, 1692, along with Sarah and Martha Corey. Martha was another church-going woman who had never done anyone any harm, yet she too was accused of being a witch and executed. On the night of October 1692, the jail where the 3 women were held became a death trap. When the prisoners' cells were unlocked for the night, Martha tried to escape but couldn't get through the heavy wooden door. Sarah managed to get out but returned to the cell to try to help Martha. Unfortunately, they were both caught and sentenced to death by hanging. Rebecca was able to escape, but only for a short time. She was recaptured the following day and hanged alongside Sarah and Martha. Some say their spirits still wander the streets of Salem at night, searching for peace after a lifetime of torment. So, what do you think? Are there really ghosts in Salem? If so, do you believe that they're the spirits of those accused during the witch trials? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. Thanks for watching.